Okay, well, looks like I was muted. That's a that's a great way to kick this off. So what you didn't hear me saying was, "Hi there. My name is Isaiah. Welcome to my Twitch cast, Tangential." What do I mean by Twitch cast? I mean a podcast that I am making that I am streaming live on Twitch. I've not done either of these things before, so we'll see how it goes. Anyways, what I wanted to talk about today was one of my favorite topics, superheroes. Specifically, I wanted to talk about villains in the MCU. Um, I'm sure it's no secret, everyone's pretty much in agreement on the reality that villains in the MCU kind of suck most of the time. There have been good ones, but a lot of them have been kind of crappy. My stream is buffering. I don't know if that's on purpose or not. We'll see what happens. Yeah. Villains in the MCU, they tend to be kind of weak. And I have a theory as to why this is. It's because the villains in the MCU are not necessarily bad villains, but rather villains that are inappropriate for the movie that they are in. What I mean by that is, uh, well, I'll just get into it. So, prior to the MCU, most superhero movies followed a pretty standard format, one that I would call the Sam Raimi format. The guy who directed the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. Now, of course, he is not the one that created this format. I just think it's very exemplified by his movies. Excuse me. Just had a little burp there. Yeah, the standard format for superhero movies prior to the MCU was as such. You have an ordinary person, and then something happens, and it bestows them with powers or just, an increased ability. Whatever it may be, they end up using it to fight crime in their hometown. Um, they become a superhero, basically. This happened in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. This happens in the Dark Knight trilogy. Happened in the Tim Burton Batman first one. Did it happen in Fantastic Four? That's kind of debatable. Um, you could argue that it happened in the first Superman movie with Christopher Reeve. Yeah, this is a pretty standard format. But the MCU just doesn't follow this most of the time. Most MCU movies are, well, different formats. You have heist movies, like with Ant Man. You have big, grand adventures with like the Avengers movie. Well, that's kind of a weird thing. But yeah, most MCU movies are a variety of genres. They do not fit this standard format. And yet, most MCU villains do fit this standard format. And as such, it just doesn't quite jive with what's going on. Um, Examples of this would be, like I mentioned, Ant Man. The villain in the first Ant Man movie is so incredibly forgettable because he is just this standard, uh, superhero movie villain. But Ant Man is a heist movie. It needs a heist movie villain. Whereas if you look at, for example, Baron von Zemo, I believe that's his name, from Captain America: Civil War. Baron von Zemo, Helmut Zemo. That's right. That's his name. I knew it was Helmut something. Yeah, Helmut Zemo in Civil War. He is a very memorable villain, and he works perfectly for that type of movie because it wasn't your standard superhero movie and it wasn't your standard superhero villain. He was someone that came in with the goal to break up this family, and that's what he accomplished. And that's what that whole movie was about: civil war. He was a Civil War appropriate villain. Other memorable villains in the MCU would be like Thanos. His whole deal was conquering the universe, and that's kind of what those first four phases were about. Is this team coming together to eventually realize this threat and defending the universe? Yeah, man, I covered that topic way, way faster than I thought I would. We'll see um, how this goes. What got me thinking about this was the movie Eternals. I finally watched that fairly recently. And honestly, I don't get the hate for that movie. Sure, you could say that it's a little long, but I thought it was good. I thought it was a perfect example of having an appropriate villain for the piece. Now, you might think the villain is that one deviant that was kind of the leader and was changing based on the powers that he absorbed. But as the movie shows, he was not the villain. He was kind of a decoy. And honestly, you could argue he was underdeveloped, but he worked well within his role. The true villain of the piece, of course. Oh, by the way, spoilers. I should have mentioned that. The true villain of the piece, was I can't remember his name, but the Eternal that Gemma Chan's character was, in love with. Uh, and the thing that made him a villain, of course, was that he, betrayed his family. And that was the perfect kind of villain for that piece because this was a movie essentially about a family. It was a family feature. It was a perfect villain for the piece. And that's what got me thinking about this whole trail. Because I wondered for a long time, like, what makes an MCU villain so bad? And why is it that only some of them are memorable? And, yeah, that's kind of what I had there. Well, I didn't really plan any of this out, guys. So it's kind of par for the course for me. I don't really like to plan. So let's see what else we can talk about to fill out this time. Sticking with the MCU, let's talk about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I gotta say, this movie, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible by any means, but I thought it was kind of weak. Let me to explain what I mean. So, I guess I'll pose a question. Was it a Doctor Strange movie? Or was it a Wanda Maximoff movie? Or was it an America Chavez movie? It kind of tries to be all three, and I feel like it kind of just fails. America Chavez, I think, is a great, probably the best example of this in the movie. She has so little character development. They attempt to have this arc for her, of her. Oh, by the way, again, spoilers. They attempt to have this arc for her of her overcoming, the guilt or whatever that she feels over the loss of her parents. And it's just kind of truncated into little bits here and there. We don't really get to see that growth or that progression. It just kind of happens sporadically. And it's like, oh, okay, now we understand more about this character. But that final payoff, when she finally overcomes that guilt and is able to use her powers to their fullest extent, it's just, it doesn't like hit home the way that it's supposed to. And I believe that's because they did not do a great job of developing her character. They did not dedicate enough time to developing her character. But honestly, I don't know how they could have. because they were really heavily split between her and Doctor Strange and Wanda Maximoff. Doctor Strange, he is, wishing that he could be with, what's his love interest's name? Something Palmer? I don't know. But yeah, Rachel McAdams, her character. He's desperate. Okay, I gotta look this up because it's gonna bug the crap out of me if I don't figure it out. Rachel McAdams, Doctor Strange. Is it Meredith? Is that what her name is? Oh man, this is gonna bug me so much. Career. Christine Palmer. Yes, Christine Palmer. He longs to be with her. He wishes he could be with her. He feels like he screwed it up. He did. He lost her because of his actions and then because of the blip. And so he longs to be with her. And the possibility that there might be another universe where he could be with her, that is like very enticing to him. Here's the problem though. Again, just spoilers for all of MCU up to this point. Just sorry. Again, they kind of dealt with that already in What If. They had an entire episode about Doctor Strange trying to find a way to be with Christine Palmer. Not the multiverse theory, but rather just the resetting the timeline thing over and over again, which effectively is multiverse. I'm not totally sure how the MCU is doing it. They kind of already went over that, but that doesn't mean that they couldn't do it in this format, especially since it's What If was a cartoon on Disney Plus, so a lot of people watching Doctor Strange 2 probably wouldn't have seen it. But even aside from that, I think they could have effectively explored that. But problem is, at the same time that they were trying to do that, excuse me, just had a little burp there. At the same time they were trying to do that, they were also trying to cover Wanda Maximoff grieving the loss of her kids. Which, side note, tangent, hence the name of this podcast. In WandaVision, they already, had this character arc of her overcoming grief, right? Or specifically the denial stage of grief. They already kind of had that. And so this is a similar type of arc, right? However, this time around, it's a villainous arc as opposed to, an outright villainous arc, right? WandaVision, you could argue that was a villainous arc. She was enslaving this entire town of people. But there was a little bit of, maybe denial on her part of what she was doing. This time around, she is kind of fully acknowledging that she is just killing people left and right to get what she wants. Yeah. But more importantly, WandaVision took, I think it was 6 episodes? Roughly, yeah. Look this up real quick. I believe it was about 6 episodes. Or it might have been 9. 9 episodes, and I did the math. It equates to roughly 6 hours. About 6 hours of content to explore her grieving the loss of her husband. Or, sorry, not husband. The love of her life. Right? So, similar type of thing, except this is less than half that amount of time. So it's going to be difficult to portray that to the same level of depth that they portrayed her grieving the loss of Vision, right? But here's the thing. I think they could have pulled it off. You can kind of see what they're doing there. Wanda had Wanda's arc in the movie and Doctor Strange's arc in the movie, they're thematically similar. Both are grieving the loss of someone. In Wanda's case, it's like they're gone, they're wiped from existence. In Doctor Strange's case, it's they're very much there, just can't go to her, right? Similar desire on both their parts, and both of them are well. Wanda is searching the multiverse for or trying to get into the multiverse so that she can find a universe where her kids are alive and she can just be their mom, right? Then you have Doctor Strange, who is presumably contemplating the idea of finding another universe where he could make it with Christine, right? Um, I guess he's not. It's not presumably. He is contemplating that. It's just there's very little attention given to that. So similar desires there, and similar. One's contemplating taking this action. The other is taking this action. So you can see what they were trying to set up. Problem is, or sorry, they're trying to set up what would have been a very like synergistic movie. Through one plot, they could have, I think, effectively resolved the arcs of both of these characters, or at least this particular arc. I think they could have done that. Problem is, they had so much plot that just had nothing to do with that and got in the way of all that. The whole thing where they were in that other universe meeting the Illuminati with Mr. Fantastic, who we did not get to see really use his stretchy powers. They kind of have it off screen. They had all that, this really long sequence that kind of didn't really have a whole lot to do with the overall themes, right? I mean, they were learning about like the dangers of multiversal travel, sure, but like it just it. I don't know. I felt like it was kind of a detour. It was like in The Last Jedi, that whole gambling planet they went to. It wasn't as bad as that, but it was a similar kind of thing. But overall, just like I think their basic idea for the plot could have worked. It's just the execution, the way they went about implementing it was just totally, I think, off. They had I think the error was this. America Chavez immediately or very quickly started trusting Doctor Strange. And as such, the whole plot of the movie was protecting her from Wanda. And like it was all too easy for Wanda to get to her, so it just kind of I don't know. It felt like a lot of padding was needed in order for that to make any sense. Or for that to be dramatic, right? I think what they should have done instead was have America Chavez. Oh, by the way, total tangent here. Side note. I found it just hilarious throughout the movie. Whenever they were talking about that character when she wasn't there, they were saying things like, "You gotta save America. Why do you want America's power?" It was the most. I don't think they were trying to be funny with that, but it was freaking hilarious. Man. Anyways. Yes, I think what they should have done, I think what would have made this whole movie work, they should have had America Chavez not trust Doctor Strange, not go with her and Wong. That's the Sorcerer Supreme's name. Wong, right? Yeah. Yes, Wong. They should have had her flee and run. And so then the plot of the movie would be not just like trying to hide America Chavez from Wanda. It would have been Doctor Strange trying to protect America from Wanda, but also having to pursue her in order to do that. So the whole movie could have been this chase, this like multi-layered chase. Both characters are chasing, both Doctor Strange and Wanda are chasing America Chavez. One is doing it to protect her, the other is doing it to, sacrifice her. Um, I think that could have worked because then. Oh, and this is what I meant to say earlier. One of the major problems was they set up Doctor Strange and Wanda to have a very similar motivation and arc in this movie, but then there was so little time where they were actually interacting with each other. In order for that to have worked, I think they needed to have interacted with each other more, which is why, if, okay, sorry, it says I have one viewer, and I don't know if that's actually someone watching it or if it's counting like me as a viewer. So I'm like, a little bit of excitement. I don't know. Anyways, I'll figure that out. Back to the task at hand. Man, what was I talking about? Doctor Strange, Wanda. Uh, yes, they didn't have Doctor Strange and Wanda interacting enough. And so I think if the movie was about both of them chasing America Chavez. Oh, and sorry, in order for this to work, America Chavez shouldn't really have. No, no, this could work. Yes. The plot would be them two chasing America. And so as a result, you could have all these scenes where Doctor Strange and Wanda end up like in the same place, fighting each other, trying to stop each other in their pursuit of America, right? And then you could have like individual scenes where other scenes where Doctor Strange catches up with America and is trying to convince her to stop fleeing, and she's not listening. And you could have her uh, go into her backstory a little bit in a more natural way than they did in the movie, because the movie did it in this very like exposition type thing, right? Um, there was like a literal a mind reader thing that just showed her whole backstory, and then she just talking about how she feels so bad about what happened, right? I think with this format that I've described, where these characters are where Doctor Strange is individually bumping into Wanda or America at any given moment, you could then have ensuing conversations that would get at this core theme of all of them grieving the loss of uh, close people they were close to and wishing they could get them back. Like that would have strengthened that core theme, allowed them to dive into that in a much more natural and more frequent manner. And I think that could have like effectively explored all these three main characters well, and that could have. I think if they had done that, it would have been a great movie. As is, it's not a terrible movie. It's just there's a lot of stuff that doesn't quite click. Um, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that matter. Man, you know what I should have done? I should have prepared a list of topics to talk about before getting into this. I did not do that. I considered doing that, and then I thought, no, I'll have enough to talk about. My brain comes up with stuff all the time to talk about. So I could have gotten through an hour easy peasy. I wasn't taking into account that when you're actually live, it's easy for your brain to just kind of lock up. Uh, well, there's a topic to talk about. I guess that's the key. I just keep talking, and I'll find stuff to talk about. So here's something. A little bit of backstory for moi. I have realized, and this is as is everything with me because I'm an INTP. Um, it's all a theory in progress, right? But I'm developing this theory about different kinds of art. Uh, I think there are three different kinds of art. And what I mean by that is not like paintings versus sculptures versus songs. No. What I mean is um, I don't know what the words are to describe this. I think the three basic types are this. You have performance, material and conceptual. Material art is, I think, what most people think of when they think of art. Material art would be like a video, a song, a book, a painting, a sculpture. Any time that creativity gets coalesced into a physical format, um, that is what I would call material art. And I think that's what most people think of when they think of art. And I myself typically go to that as well. But, you know, what kind of got me thinking about this is, for me, and I'll get into those other two in a second. Trust me, I'll get there. For me, like, for pretty much my whole life, have just wanted to make movies and TV shows, and maybe video games too, because I have like constant. I love movies and TV. I love like film. It's like my favorite art form. And I have like I'm constantly having story ideas, and I have like this whole interconnected omniverse of story ideas in my head. It's like a multiverse of multiverses, and I got all this like lore and all this stuff in my head, and like yeah, and so like I've always wanted to produce these, turn these into like movies and TV shows. Um, but then like whenever I've made steps in that direction to try to do that, to try to like start creating stuff, because I have like very very big ideas, right? Very big grand visions. So it's always kind of been like, well, start small so you can actually make something, and eventually you'll get up there, right? Well, every like foray I made into that realm, I just kind of like didn't enjoy. Didn't really care a whole lot about it. Um, I mean, there were elements that I enjoyed, but like overall, I just kind of like I didn't want to keep doing it, and that bugged me because I was like, well, I want to turn these. I want these story ideas to get out there on the screen, but like I seem to not like doing that. So what's the big idea? What's the big deal here? And then I would see, like in high school, I had friends who would draw all the time, and it was like nonstop. I'm like, why do they like doing what they're doing? Why do they like their drawings? The process of doing that, and like I don't like my thing. And then as an adult, like I'm on TikTok seeing people making their paintings or drawings or sculptures or whatever, and they seem to just like love doing it. And I'm like, why can't I love doing my thing? I don't get it. And it occurred to me as I was looking that over. Um, these people that I'm getting jealous of, it seems to not really matter a whole lot what they create. I mean, obviously they have like their styles, their subject matter, the topics they like to focus on, but like it's almost just like they have to get something out there into the world. They have to create this physical thing. If they're not doing that, then they're just like got their finger in the hole in the dam, and that's a bad example. If they're not doing that, it's like they have like stuffed a sock into their exhaust pipe, and their car is not able to pump out the fumes. Again, that might be a terrible example. It's like, what is it like? I don't know. It's just like if they're not creating some physical thing, then it's like they're not being themselves. It's like they just have to get something out there. And that kind of got me thinking, and it kind of opened my eyes a little bit and helped me kind of think a little bit more about like what exactly creativity and art is. Because I've realized about myself, even though I don't really write, even though I don't seem to enjoy writing, despite how often I've tried it, and I've not really been a fan of like the video making process, and all this stuff, um, I realized even though I don't do any of that stuff, I still tell stories constantly. In fact, if you ask my friends, my family, I'm constantly telling stories. I'm telling a story right now. I do it without even thinking about it. I just do it nonstop. So where you could say that like my friends in high school and these people on TikTok, it's like they have to create some physical thing. If you observe my behavior, it's like I have to tell stories. Even when I even though I just don't write and I don't make videos and I don't whatever, I'm still constantly telling stories. It's like I can't help myself. Just like those people in high school and on TikTok, but in a different format. And I realized that format, that type of art, is what you would call storytelling. Sorry. No, no. That format is what you would call performance. Not format. That type of art is what you would call performance art. Performance art is like singing, dancing, storytelling, acting, uh, reciting poetry. It's not about creating some physical product. It's about having a or putting on a show for people. It's about creating an experience in the moment. There are tons of people, especially if you go look online, tons of people that just like can't help but do that. And apparently, I'm one of them. And I realize there's another kind of art as well. It's a little different. It's conceptual art. It's the creation and the refinement and the sharing of ideas. Um, okay, sorry. If this one viewer is not me, could you like put something in the chat so I could know that you're a real person? It's just this in the back of my mind. It's like all I can think about right now. Uh, that's that's ADD for you, extroverted intuition, whatever you want to call it. If you don't want to chat, that's fine. Don't do it. You don't have to. Um, yeah. um, anyways, what was I talking about? Types of art. There's a reason I named the show Tangential. I hope I didn't just clip the audio here. There's a reason I named the show Tangential. It's because my mind constantly goes off on little rabbit trails, constantly goes off on tangents. I can't help it. It's extroverted intuition. I cannot help but just constantly launch into new ideas. Um, which is the third type of art I was talking about there, or it ties into that. Conceptual art. Conceptual art or creativity, whatever. It is the creation and the refinement and the sharing of ideas. Um, like I was saying earlier, all of my story ideas they fit into what I call this omniverse. Uh, it is a bunch of multiverses, all like separate from each other, all have their own rules and ways of functioning. Some have parallel universes, some have just like dimensions that can be traveled between, or each universe is like its own separate dimension, but you can travel between them. Others have parallel universes that cannot be traveled between. Some have magic, some have superpowers. It's all this stuff. Uh, but each of these multiverses are connected by the nether. It is this like space that runs between universes, between multiverses. It just connects all of it. And I have all this lore behind that and how it works, and every story idea I have, like I'm naturally like finding a way for it to fit in there. Fit in this like format, um, framework, omniverse, whatever. I have like ideas. I find ways for it to fit in there, and I shape it around that core idea that this is all connected. Um, Things like that I would call conceptual art. And the conceptual art, it doesn't just stop short of like um, I, you could argue conceptual art doesn't really exist on its own. That it's kind of inevitably gets paired with either material art or performance art. Um, that may not be true because I guess you can talk about ideas without putting on a show, without performing. But at the same time, you could argue that the presentation of ideas is a performance in and of itself. I don't know. And if that's true, then is it even possible to do material art or do performance art without having conceptual art in the mix? Because my core theory is, or part of my theory is just that every creative person, and maybe you could even argue every person, I don't know, but at least creative people, they all gravitate towards these three fields in varying degrees. Um, which I probably meant to say back when I started talking about this, but yeah. Um, so you could argue that like if you're doing performance art or material art, that there is conceptual art happening in there. Maybe not. I don't know, because like you see actors performing with scripts, and I guess they're working out like the character in their head. I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, the reason I bring all that up because I'm looking for stuff to talk about. But also just, for me, what that kind of helped me realize is that, like, yes, based on my observations, I don't seem to like doing material art all that much. I don't really seem to enjoy uh, creating videos. I don't seem to enjoy writing. I like them to. I like doing these things to an extent. Like I enjoy drawing here and there, enjoy writing here and there, even doing maybe like a musical thing here and there. But like for the most part, I don't really care for the process of actually making that happen. Uh, like you can see this in my D&D prep. I run a D&D game with some friends, and like I have the concepts, the conceptual side of things. Um, I have the performance side of things down. I'm great at just improvising all this stuff in the moment. But actually, like writing down information and uh, coming up with like the mechanical side of things or like quest lines and stuff, or quest starters, whatever. That stuff, that more like detail oriented stuff that requires actually like sitting down and kind of mapping it out. I struggle with that immensely. The what? I'm hearing crazy sounds outside. I don't know what that is. Yeah, you can see how I struggle with the material side of things in that alone. My prep process is often me sitting there like, oh, I wish I didn't have to write all this stuff down. And then kind of winging a lot of it. Um, but it's okay. That's my message today. If you are an artist and you feel like you are not really you don't you feel like you're not an artist because if you're creative but you feel like you're not an artist because like you can't sit down and make art, ask yourself like is the kind of art that you're trying to make actually the kind of art that you enjoy making? Maybe it's not. And if that's the case, maybe adjust accordingly. You'll probably find some more contentment in doing that. I can attest to you that if you were really married to to the whatever idea you were trying to create first off, um, it's going to be difficult to divorce yourself from that idea. I'm not trying to go with marriage analogies here, but whatever. um, it'll be tough, especially if like this is something you've been chasing your whole life, or you kind of have your identity wrapped up in this thing, which I can tell you I did, and I'm still struggling to break that hold. Um, but yeah, yeah, consider that. Don't lose hope. Don't lose heart. Don't get discouraged. Um, it's worth stepping back and taking a look and figuring out what you actually do and like doing. And with that, I've been going about 40 minutes here. So I could keep rambling, but I think I will wrap it up there because I am going to have to not burn through all my topics so fast. I genuinely thought that talking about MCU villains would go so much longer than it did. That was so freaking quick. Um, yeah. So, anyways, looking for a co-host to have more information or more, I don't know, a person to bounce off of, which will hopefully add some more interesting content and help stretch these out a little bit. Uh, yeah, yeah, looking for a co-host, man. Now hiring, no pay, and maybe friendship. That's what I can offer you. Uh, this one viewer, if you are indeed a person who is not me, or oh, you know what? I wonder. I used this computer to check out my laptop. I used it to check out my test stream. Nope, I'm not signed into it. So you must be real. Let's see what happens if I actually click on there. I'm sure this is a mesmerizing experience for uh, the people that are just listening to this. Click on it. Wait a few seconds. Oh, gonna mute that. Wait a few seconds. Does my viewer count go up? Or because this is not signed into Twitch, is it gonna affect anything? Test motion. I'm gonna have to edit this out. Huh. Oh, is one viewer like the default? Like, can it not say that you have 0 viewers? Who knows? Well, anyways, um, if you are a real person, my one lonely viewer, thanks for watching, listening, whatever way you're viewing this in. Gosh, this. Yeah. Like I said, looking for a co-host. And we'll see if I do any more of these. I'm kind of just experimenting, seeing if I like this or not. With that, ooh, desk shake. With that, toodaloo. Catch you next time. Maybe.